crack a beer. It's open bar, and we got something to talk about here. This is Rollo did something that I don't think has been touched on, and yikes.
Strong and wild, we rise up high. Conquer fears, won't let them reside. Heartbeats pound as we take the dive. Living now feels so alive. Heart steel veins glowing bright. Fitness gone in the dead of night. Fading game, we got the sight. Crushing finance, career out of sight. Man up now, we own it true. Breaking chains, just me and you. Success stories everywhere. Living life beyond compare.
What's going on, everybody? It's your big brother Kevin here from the Men of Now. If you tuned in last week, we did a show on the Iron Rules of Tomassi, which is the final chapter of The Rational Male, which is a book that has played a big part in Red Pill and Manosphere space. So we wanted to discuss that a little bit more tonight. But before we do that, I want to bring in two really good friends of mine, Alex Huds, know him as the Hudsman, and Josh, Renegade Wingman. How you guys doing?
Fantastic, man. I am excited to continue this discussion. It's been so cool to go through history and just kind of share with everybody some of the information that they may not know. And even if you do know, to reflect back on kind of how we ended up where we are today.
Yeah, of course.
Echoing that sentiment, it's pretty wild seeing how like everything is how it is today. And you know, if you rewind the clock back like 10 years ago, like no one had any idea it would go this direction. So it's always kind of fun to kind of revisit and go back and just see like, okay, here's where things were. And here's kind of the journey and progression that they took to get to where they are, which, you know, now begs the question of where are things going from where we currently are.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was thinking about it today, and it's hard to believe that 2013 is when The Rational Male hit the bookstores. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't become aware of Rollo Tomassi or The Rational Male till about 2019, when I was watching Rich Cooper and Entrepreneurs in Cars, and he brought it up. And so I got spun up on it, went and bought the book. And if I would have found it in 2013 rather than 2019, it probably would have changed my outlook a little bit different. But The Rational Male has become probably one of the cornerstones of past PUA, past the initial stages of the Manosphere and Red Pill, that became a staple for Red Pill ideology. You know, and The Rational Male, it brings up relationships in a different light, you know, something past the norm of intersexual relationships and putting into more of the male's perspective. And I think would be a great thing for every young man to read, even any man of any age that coming out of a breakup. What do you guys think?
I couldn't agree more. One of the things about Rollo that really I think is so impactful to the space is that for a long time, it was a lot of different people just being on forums like So Suave or whatever, just being keyboard warriors, either complaining or discussing, exchanging ideas, and improving as well. But it wasn't until Rollo, which, let's be honest, what Rollo essentially did is he compiled all this information into one place so that any guy of any age can go ahead and grab The Rational Male and get the information necessary that they need to be successful. And we did not have a compiler until that point in time. That's what I think is so impactful about the entire thing. And truly, honestly, oh man, if I had this book back when I was in high school, let's be honest, I love my life and my life's great, but my life could have been even better. And that's one thing that I would recommend, that anybody who has a son, share this book with them before they turn 18.
Yeah, I mean, and building off that point, it's a really excellent point that you made there, is that all of the information and everything and the different personalities and forums and whatnot, they were kind of like these, different tribes in these sort of nomadic lands that were sort of starting to get in a more unified direction. And so really once Rollo came onto the scene, especially once he started his blog at the time, right? Because that was the big thing. So he started his blog first, which was known as the Rational Male blog. That was the first sort of consolidated hub to really coin, the phrase, the sphere or the space or red pill or whatever. That was really the very genesis of coining that. Because before that, everything was just kind of like PUAs, sort of just like pickup guy type thing. So moving and evolving to that next sort of stage and that next evolution, the Rational Male blog with a lot of articles. Because the thing about the book is that, as seminal as the book is, that's a more condensed version of all of the stuff that was on the blog, because he's got a lot of articles, a wealth and repository of just different information that he's, again, collected and compiled from stuff that he came up with on different forums versus things that he's overheard from other folks, and really compile those ideas. So as a very good consolidated snapshot and a really good outlining of the mechanics of intersexual dynamics and relationships, it's definitely a seminal, groundbreaking work, and for sure something that recommend everybody just take a look at and read for sure, because it really breaks down and outlines a lot of the ideas out of there. So anything that you see or hear in the space that's coined of any like way, shape, or form or phrasing, it all does come and stem from that blog, which was then turned into not only this book, but there were a series of books. But the first one is definitely the most prominent and pronounced, I'd say, introduction into the broader general ideas of things.
And just so everyone's aware, because I do have one of the other ones over here, Rollo's book is the Rational Male, which is going to give you the basics. Then number 2 is on marriage. And then number 3 is on religion. And number 4 is on game. So if there's specific things between like marriage, religion, game, things like that, definitely always start with the first book, but know that those other resources are available.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I've read this book twice, cover to cover, and I have it on Audible, and I've listened to it several times. And the one thing I've noticed that's different about this book is it's still relevant now, just as much now as it was in 2013. Like stuff before that, like pickup artists, those routines, that era of learning game, rehearsed game, that stuff, most of it doesn't work anymore. And one thing I like about the Rational Male and how it puts in things into perspective of unplugging, Manosphere, all of that stuff, all this stuff is still relevant today. And I think it's going to continue to stay relevant for years and years to come.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that. It's crazy. It's funny too. I was actually watching Bitter. Well, now I gotta change my language, because I call him Bitter Bachelor, because he is kind of like the bitter old man. But love the guy to death, Joker. Better Bachelor talked about it today. He went back and he looked at one of his videos from 5 years ago and what was going on in the news, his commentary on it, and nothing has changed. As much as we think things have changed, nothing has really changed. If anything, it's only kind of grown into the intersexual dynamics, the social dynamics, just like all of it. It's no different. It's been going in one trajectory. It's not going to change. So this type of work, even so, I mean, why do we still read like the Bible? Why do we still read some of these old scripts? We read them because you can gain knowledge from the past. And we're in a time right now where things are changing quicker than ever. However, it hasn't changed that much. These are the basics. And with the basics, you learn everything you need to know to be successful today. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, and it's really like this book is kind of like the iPhone version of the ideology, right? Where it's there and it's accessible. And so, smartphones have definitely evolved a lot since the iPhone, but the core parameters, right? We've kind of hit we kind of know what to expect, and we have gotten sort of bored, or don't have the full true appreciation for how amazing these machines really are, because now we want the next quantum leap, which the iPhone was to prior phones before that. So kind of similar with this and this methodology and this praxology that was developed and consolidated. And again, it's really easy to take a lot of this stuff for granted, because especially a lot of younger guys today that just start getting into searching for knowledge or information out there, and they wind up asking a lot of different questions, or they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is like so blatantly apparently obvious, like how come no one knew this before? It's like, well, to understand all of that and how it all got here, there was a lot of work and a lot of research and things and momentum that built up into this. But it really wasn't until that blog came out that it was really put down in sort of one consolidated space that, again, a lot of people came to. And so usually people get their introduction through one of a few ways to the rational male. Either it was like really old school with the blog, through the book, through a lot of the media that he's now been partaking in, or interviews or things that, or probably I'd say a good still maybe 30% of people get that introduction is through the infamous SMV graph, which is something that lives in kind of infamy around the entire space. But it's still one of those things that people go back to and hotly debate and talk about to this day.
I'm gonna pull that up because I think that would be super interesting to dive into. One thing I do want to do is just give a shout out to Elena here. Elena has some fantastic content, guys. She's a huge supporter here on the Dragon Ship as well. She's very based, very entertaining content. Definitely check her out. And Elena, if you're free, hop on the stream. I would love to hear your perspective on this. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes. All right. So, oh shoot, what was I going to say with this? One thing that I want to say is that although everything is ever evolving, Rollo's book definitely is your best start. I don't know if I necessarily would say that some of the stuff that Rollo's doing today would be the best. He's doing a lot of this stuff with Mike Sartain, doing Access Vegas. And again, it's the same style show as Fresh and Fit, where it's a bunch of hot girls coming on and just having discussions like this. I think that Rollo's best work was before. I'm not saying that he's on the decline or anything at all. That's where you should start, but always keep your eyes open for other people in this space that are bringing some new information and continuing to move the ball forward. I don't know what you guys think about that. I don't know if that's controversial, but
well, it's just entertaining because, again, with a lot of content creators out there, right? It's like if you hear a lot of the stuff that they say and then you read the rational male, you're like, all of that is like just their unique take and their unique spin off of everything that came out of this book. So, it's kind of important for especially a lot of guys that are very new to this type of content or coming into this type of space. You hear a lot of these, ideologies or praxologies or different people discussing different things. But if you want to shortcut all of it, read the Rational Male book and then go look at all the other content creators you're watching now, and you'll see that almost all of them are literally quoting in some way, shape, or form directly from this sort of the source context. So it's wildly entertaining.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So hold on before we get into it, Kevin. Sorry, the controversial graph that Josh was talking about. Who wants to go ahead and explain what this graph is?
Josh, if
Okay,
you want to
okay,
hit it up,
hey, I could do it if you guys don't want to do
no,
it.
it's. I mean, it's it's a touchy subject because what makes it controversial is, for lack of a better term, the 35-year-old single mom out there. She doesn't like to hear this, but basically, it just explains sexual market value and when you hit your peaks. And if you notice, the pink obviously is the females. I don't have it large enough where I can see it. My glasses aren't good enough, but I know it well enough to say between the ages of 18 and 25 is when a female really hits her sexual market peak, as far as looks, fertility, all the things that men would want in an ideal woman, that's their peak. Now, if you see with men, it's far later in life. Usually it's about 35 to 40 is when they hit their peak of their sexual market value.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting because I would actually argue that with this, like, I'm going to say right now, this graph is 100% truth. I think it's 100% truth. The only thing that in modern times, I actually think that this graph should be shifted slightly to the right. So what it's essentially saying is women get their peak around 23 and then come down. And men, they hit kind of their first hurdle right here around that like age 22, 23. That's kind of when you're fresh out of school and you're establishing yourself. And then it's kind of figuring yourself out before that big upswing. Now, I would actually argue that the peak for women might actually be shifted a little bit further to like 25, 26. I know that may be controversial, but I think it's shifted slightly to the side. And I also would say that with men, it's shifted slightly to the side. However, I do not think that the peak is shifted. I think that this ramp up for men doesn't really occur until that 25, 26. And that's a slow growth until they get to around 27, 28, that they're like, oh, okay, I have to be an adult. And then everything starts to change. But
yeah,
the
and that's
thing,
when
but and the thing that I'm trying to like really press on this and why it's so true is that the things that women find attractive in men and the things that men find attractive in women, they are different.
Yeah.
And that gets lost so often.
Yeah, the big thing for anybody that may get like offended or mad, like just taking this at face value or at glance, is that understand that first off, this graph is a visual representation of like an entire multi-page article going into the details and nuances of things, where it clearly states that, well, as a more general rule, this tends to be the curve, but obviously with a lot of individuals, right? Because the first thing people are going to say is, well, I have my friend and she's at her peak and she's blah, blah, blah. Or I know my guy, he's at his peak and he's at a different, that's okay. Yeah, there's always exceptions to the rules, always outliers, but as a more baseline general guide. And again, there's a lot of nuance that's really based into and baked into this chart. So when you see it at face value, a lot of people get that little bit of a shock. But if you actually like read the article pretty thoroughly, there's a lot of very good use cases, examples, and points. But also going to Huds's points, again, this is not talking about like a person's value as a human being or anything.
No.
It's purely talking about from just, hey, if you are out on the dating market and on the dating pool, based off of the attraction factors that men prefer and the attraction factors that women prefer, here's a little bit of quantified research that shows, hey, here's where ideally guys have their strongest preference range, and here's where ideally girls have their strongest preference range. So, which of course a lot of people have, a lot of issues and debate, and I've debated this a lot with both men and women, which is led to very interesting and very thoughtful conversations. But to Huds's point, the big thing is that, yeah, if you see in this and you're, just start seeing red, the first thing I say is like, hey, look, first, take a look at the actual article itself and fully understand like what goes into those calculations. Because again, like when, people look at a stock chart, right, and they go, oh my gosh, the stock is like way up, or oh my gosh, the stock is way down. Well, you're seeing a snapshot, but you aren't seeing the full story and everything that went into it. So if you want true understanding and you want to really get the full context of everything, then definitely would encourage people to go check out that article because it's a really, really well laid out article going into a lot of different factors that, again, we're talking about purely dating preferences, right? As far as what guys and girls are looking for out of a more idealized mate. And again, that's on a purely superficial level.
Yeah. It's more that pragmatic assumptions to coming into that. And and if you do get offended by it, like because maybe you're a 30-year-old female that's still single, no children, that doesn't mean that your sexual market value is diminished. If you're a 35-year-old guy but you're doing everything that a 45-year-old man, it can always move to the right or the left, but it makes it easier when you learn and you accept your sexual market value. That makes your relationships become more realistic to you, and so you don't set yourself up for failure. And I think that's the best way to go, looking at it from that perspective of sexual market value of the 35-year-old lady that was basically a 10 when she was 28, but she's not at her peak anymore. Don't just put the 6 and 7 guys that are hitting on you aside just because maybe 10 years ago you could have got a 10. Now just accept that sexual market value is very real, and if you learn that about yourself and you accept it and you love it about yourself, that makes you a lot more apt to find more healthy and meaningful relationships.
Well put. Well, I want to hear from the other side, because we're just 3 guys talking about this. I got my good friend Elena here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing, guys?
Thank you for being here.
Doing fantastic. What are your thoughts on Rollo's?
On the graph.
Yeah.
Wow.
Immediately in the hot seat.
I kind of agree with you, Hans, that it probably has shifted a little bit over the years, because women, they don't tend to settle down early, and they are delusional. So it probably forces them to think that they are in their peak years much later than they objectively are. I mean, it's all perceptual, right? We are talking about sexual market value. So if women view themselves as a 10, so it doesn't really matter how old she is, because if she believes that she's a 10, she will be convinced that she's a 10 even when she's 45 or 50.
or 70.
Or 70, right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, delusion is one thing. Being realistic with yourself is another. Being a 10, I mean, people there's very few 10s out there. That means you're flawless. And it's always seems that the women want to rate themselves very high, which is fine. You have the confidence, you want to feel good, and men tend to rate themselves a little bit lower. But as you go into sexual market value and on the open market with a realistic and more pragmatic look at it, it makes it a lot more easier, because if you're always thinking you can do better or you can get a little bit better using that hypergamy to your advantage or monkey branching, it's going to end up with a lot of failed relationships that are going to lead to being harder to create healthy and meaningful relationships for the next guys to come.
And I think it's also just very helpful to your point, right? Just help people understand like the world, how it operates a little bit. And again, this is not a knock against anybody personally, but if I looked at this graph and I would have seen this, back when I was like 19, 20, 21, 22, it would have alleviated things so much easier for me. Because again, as I'm sure a lot of you guys out there can resonate with this. You're a 22-year-old guy and you're trying to talk to your classmates or girls that are the exact same age as you, and they have absolutely zero interest in you, want absolutely nothing to do with you. Literally the only other guys that are your age that they have some type of interest or something in that in that way, shape, or form are usually guys that are some type of celebrity, pro athlete, musician, or just doing a way better at a very, very young age. So, or they're dating a lot of guys that are, a lot older than you. So as a, younger guy, it's just like you get really frustrated because you're just like, all right, I don't understand. But being able to visually see like, oh, okay, here's where I am in the dating market. And again, these are women's preferences. So right now as a 22-year-old guy, a vast majority of women, I'm just going to be either kind of invisible to, or just they're going to be more or less indifferent to me. And, going through life and getting a bit older, looking back and being like, oh yeah, no, obviously why? Because there were just so many guys that, when it came to dating pool partners, they were far better choices than I ever was or could have been at 22. But as I, worked on myself, built myself up, and then started going and sliding up the graph, it's just, understanding that, okay, now here's where kind of my available options are. So, again, if you take a look at this, I would say, like, don't get discouraged. I think it's a good thing to have as a good baseline, just so, again, you kind of understand the pool and the market that you're in. So one, you kind of know who you're competing against, but also two, you understand based off of what the other side is attracted to. Now, okay, here's where the factors are, where they lie, but here's exactly like how I can place my available maneuverability. And yes, some of you people are definitely going to be, exceptions to that rule for sure. But as a general rule overall, it's just helpful to know like how to navigate the space and what the preferences are at different timings.
Absolutely. Elena, I want to turn it to you. Because I know you do some fun content on this. You have a lot of fun reels on it. Because I kind of blew past this as well. If you want to introduce yourself to everybody on who you are and what you do, and I would like to understand what your perspective is on this graph and this entire understanding of the sexual marketplace.
Wow. Well, I'm Elena. I'm a fitness instructor. I teach fitness to people on my YouTube channel, and also I have classes on my Patreon. And I have been in the red pill since 2019. And I didn't do a lot of red pill content. I was just watching and observing and analyzing. But I started talking about the red pill topics on my channel and with the yoga community for about 2.5 years or so. And the sexual market value, it's something that women don't want to acknowledge, because they believe in all of the delusions that they're being exposed to. And propaganda is something that I've studied back in school a long time ago. And guys, I realized that red pill is focusing a lot on improving men, right? So that you realize your worth, you do your best, and then you can see what kinds of women you can attract. But there is very little emphasis on improving women. And
that's a great point. Yeah.
It's like, okay, guys, you are improving yourselves. You're doing your best, right? You're working on your masculinity, on your other skills, and your financial stability. But like, what for? I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, you do it for yourself, right? Because frame is everything. But then my question is, like, the kinds of women, the quality of women, it really sucks, don't you think?
Well, see, the issue is women don't like to hear that they're wrong. So when you try and tell them how to improve or how to make things better, they don't want to hear it. So that's the struggle that we as men are facing, and it's difficult. Like I know this channel is called Men of Now. Okay. We are planning to in time create a Women of Now, and then in time have a collective type of, we each have our separate things that we talk about, but then we also come together. Because really what we're trying to do here is bring the sexes together instead of keep them so separated, because that's the problem that I'm seeing.
And I mean, I think to your point, when it comes to, the focus and the quality of women out there, I think that, I don't know, in reality, I don't think that it's really too much of a quality issue, because I think a lot of times what we see on the feminine side is a reflection of what's happening on the masculine side. So this is where my sexism will slightly step out, where I think that 95% of relationship problems and issues all come back down to guys and how we conduct ourselves. So, if for the last, 50, 60 years, we had a string of very self-actualized men out there, the dating market would have been a lot better. It would be a lot stronger, and we'd see a very different shift in the dynamics that we are today. So, when the guys don't really step up and do what they're supposed to do, then that creates a bit of a void. So a lot of what we're seeing about, these women that, you know, a lot of guys would say like, oh, they're, you know, not of high quality or not of X, Y, or Z. A lot of that tends to come and stem from being more of a defense mechanism because, hey, there wasn't, you know, a good, strong, positive masculine influence that was in someone's life. So there was a void, and nature abhors a vacuum. So it has to be filled some way. So, you know, that's it tends to be more of my take on it, is that, you know, if we get more guys out there doing what they're supposed to be doing and being a lot more self-actualized, we'll see there's a shift and there's a balance in the marketplace will kind of naturally occur. But for the time being, is right now, it's, yeah, you know, it's rough out there on both sides. And the unfortunate reality is that neither, as a whole, neither men or women are really winning in this current dating environment.
And what's your name? Sorry, I forgot to ask you guys. Who am I talking to?
Well, I'm Kevin, big brother over at the Minimum now.
Okay, yes. Kevin. And you are?
Renegade Wingman, but everyone calls me Josh by my real name, so...
Josh. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have a question for you, Josh. You said that men are not behaving in a masculine way, but I have been analyzing, and I wonder how much are they allowed to execute on their masculinity today? Because if you look at the institutions, everything is ruled by women now. So if a woman is unhappy in the marriage, right, most likely, no matter how a man behaves, okay, he might be allowed to express his masculinity in certain ways. And I've been analyzing content for a while. I can see a lot of feminist women are whining and moaning the men are not masculine enough. Yeah, but it takes two parties to tango, right? So if a woman is not feminine, a man, like, how is he going to execute upon his masculinity if all of the institutions are against the man?
No, that's a very fantastic question. And so the question I would pose to that question would be, how did the institutions get to this point? And so diving back and answering that question, I think like you find the fundamental root cause of things. And so if you do kind of point back to the 60s with, you know, the sexual revolution, but also the counterculture movement, a lot of things that were going on in the world at that time. But the biggest thing that happened during that period of time was socially, the youth of the era said, we're going to kind of reject sort of our parents' ideology, and we're going to swing the pendulum the exact opposite way. So whatever our parents were trying to do, you know, we feel that it's a little too repressive, too restrictive, whatever. We're going the exact opposite way, and we're going to open up the floodgates and just run in this direction. So when you do that, right, and you shift the pendulum so, you know, significantly in one direction, then suddenly the institutions start to kind of follow in that manner as new generations come up, right? Because you have one generation that's completely rebellious and wants to do the exact opposite. So the one after that gets a lot of those ideas. And so the one after that gets a lot of those ideas. So that's why with this particular space and where everyone, you know, is saying like, well, when are, you know, we going to get back to where things are going to go? It's not really so much about going back. It's about kind of pushing forward, but it is going to take, it's not going to be an overnight transition. It's definitely going to take a little bit of a time because there is a ripple effect, because it's like, hey, we've got to get more guys actualized out there, and then they have to help actualize the next generation, right? And then not contribute to the problems that led to this current generation. Because, you know, one of the big things I'm always an advocate of is you want to be responsible. And you see a lot of guys out there that are actualized, but they're being the playboy lifestyle, leaving a bunch of, right, creating a bunch of single mothers, not taking care of their kids, not actualizing their masculine presence out there. And that creates a large part of what we're seeing in the aftermath today.
So do you think it's just the men's fault that there are so many single mothers out there?
No, not 100%. Like, again, that's why I said 90. I'm putting 90% of the blame on us. But again, there is, you know, I believe in individual accountability out there as well, too.
Well, then see, I think this is the problem. Sorry, just a quick note here. Because you guys, you have humility to acknowledge that you did something wrong, right? And then women blame men. Women blame men for, so even you say that 90% of those decisions that are bad decisions to impregnate the women and convert them into single mothers are on men. But what about women? Women choose to spread the legs with this man. You know, they choose to be with this man. Like there is no accountability there. It's very hard to put any accountability on women when you take all of the blame, or at least most of the blame for it.
Well, I think that's kind of us as men. We're stuck with that burden of performance, which a part of that too is burden of accountability. So we will be humble. We will step back and we will accept the fact that we haven't done things as good as we could have. But you don't see that on the other side. And that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that too. Like when you say it's all the men, I mean, when roughly 75% of divorces are initiated by women, I mean, there is, I don't think Josh was saying it's all men's fault that things are like they are. There was something that happened in the past where embracing gender roles became a bad thing, of the man being the man and the woman being the woman, and fulfilling the not obligations or duties, but the roles that the man played and the woman played in the relationship or in life in general suddenly became a bad thing or became not the way to do it. And I think that was the biggest beginning of the end for that time, when relationships and the divorce rate became so high, single motherhood became so high, is gender roles not being embraced anymore.
yeah, and just sometimes it's
Well, hold on. Do you guys agree with this? Men have the final decision during the sexual interaction to not get a woman pregnant.
What? Sorry.
I don't I can't. You understand what I'm saying, Elena? I'm just like, ugh.
Well, I mean,
Wow.
we're going to get kind of vulgar if you're meaning that it's the man's decision to pull out or not. I mean, I guess in a sense you can try to make that make sense in your mind, but I want you to think about it this way. It's been said, women control access to sex, men control access to the relationships. So to take it back to the beginning, it's the woman that basically allows sex to happen.
Yep.
So to say the man, it's the final decision. No, he didn't pull out fast enough, or maybe something, was an accident. That's there. No, I will not agree with that statement.
Well,
Yeah,
there's a follow-up comment there.
She is following it up, and I'm not trying to attack you at all. It's funny because sometimes we do see that women tend to take that stance. Well, like, but it's both sides. It takes two to tango. There's a reason why that phrase exists.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And
thanks for the comment, by the way. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, that's a bring on, but can't wholeheartedly agree with it. But yeah, because it takes two. And pregnancy, not to go back too traditional, but pregnancy should always be planned. It should be someone that you're in a committed relationship, preferably maybe marriage or however you do that. Now, accidents do happen. Want to say that. However, to say that the man did it intentionally or it was his fault, no, that there's a 50, there is some points where it's 50-50, and that's going to be 50% woman, 50% man's responsibility for creating the pregnancy and then raising a child afterwards.
I also have a comment to add to that. There are so many contraceptive methods. So if a woman doesn't want to be pregnant because she's going to bear the child for the whole 9 months, right, and take care of it later, hopefully, in case she's pregnant, there are so many contraceptive methods to prevent the pregnancy. Okay, if women choose to spread their legs with a man that they are not willing to marry and commit to, install IUD, use injections, use pills. There are tons of methods out there.
Yeah, I would say that
there's methods as well that are not like I understand hormonal. Yeah, I can't even speak. Hormonal birth control. Get it? That there can be problems with it, but there's also non-hormonal ways of birth control. The thing is that we have so many methods for women to have birth control, but very few for men. So it's something to really, really take into consideration.
Mhm.
Well, for most men, their severe lack of game is birth control, right?
Oh my
not,
God.
yeah, not bashing the dudes out there, but
Mhm.
you know, I would definitely say that it's a very good question, as well as it's a very good point that it does involve both sides. And I think one thing that gets a little glossed over, and again, not harping on the guys, but guys, I'm just trying to help you, you know, get a little bit better here, which is that you know, when it comes to, yes, women have control to sexual access, but men have control to relationship access. The relationship access piece, that is a very, very big and significant responsibility, because the way in which you conduct yourself in that relationship can definitely have a ripple effect that lasts much more throughout a lifetime. So that's where, again, I sort of place a little bit more of the responsibility on the guy's shoulders, because a guy has the capability to deeply impact a girl in a very, very significant manner that will drastically impact a lot of her future relationships down the road, a bit more so than girls on the guy side. Again, not saying like it can't happen, because it definitely does. But if I were to draw a line of generalities, especially when it comes to very like young relationships and relationships when you're, you know, pretty early on and you're inexperienced, you can see that a lot of those guys' relationships can have significant impacts that have very long-lasting ripple effects throughout into the future. So it's just something for guys to be very, very cognizantly aware of, is that, you know, yeah, you have access to the relationship, but it's also a responsibility.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, Josh, especially when you're younger. The way you can, as a man or a young man, that you can affect women through the relationship, whether it be mistreatment, manipulation, psychological operations, abusiveness. Those are the things that are a man's responsibility to be cognizant of as you're young, and not to you know, just go out and break many women's hearts, treat women like they want, and then when you get older, now you're ready to, you know, settle in with someone and create a meaningful relationship. That relationships emotionally affect women differently than they do men, I think. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah,
When I say that, I should mean how the relationship goes, and how, if it ends the way it ends and the things that caused it to end, emotionally affect women somewhat differently than it does men.
It can, but I don't know. It's a tricky question.
I have
What I mean by that, if you're sleeping, if you're cheating on her constantly, you're constantly verbally abusive, or, you know, basically just a shitty boyfriend, and always making her feel bad, always. So when the relationship ends, those scars don't just go away that quickly.
Right. Okay.
That's
No, I hear you. I hear you now. I think that it goes both ways, like, because I've been on that other side. I've been on that other side of having a girl completely dick around with me. But I've also been on the other side of dicking around with girls, and I think more about my personal experience of what I experienced with that girl that was dicking around with me. I don't think so much about those individual experiences where I was dicking around with the girls. So I totally understand what you're saying with that. I think that long term it kind of adds up, and it ends up creating this thick skin that becomes impenetrable at a certain point in time, which then makes it impossible for them to then pair bond from there.
Yeah,
what are your guys' thoughts
exactly.
on that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. You know, so I mean, and I'm not saying that's just all men's fault. I mean, because women do it too. But those things that early on, what can make it harder when you get older to form a pair bond, like you were saying. So it's I don't know why we kind of went off on that. However, I think it was to Josh's point that, you know, men, we do carry a burden of responsibility, whether it was sexual with pregnancy, but also emotionally in the relationship.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say for a little bit here is that, you know, the way just we approach things are slightly different, because again, men tend to fall in love with what they see, women tend to fall in love with what they hear, right? And so, it's when you look at how we approach those relationships in that way, then you can start to see where, both sides, right, can definitely be manipulative or exploitive on that side. But, on the guy's side, there's that responsibility of understanding like, hey, girls are going to fall in love with like what it is that you say. So you have to be about it. And unfortunately, we definitely do get a lot of guys out there that are liars or, try to fake it till they make it, so to speak. So, again, this is not a man bashing episode here, by the way, because, I got your guys' best interests at heart, but just saying like, hey, we got some responsibilities out there.
Absolutely.
So what would you say when women, as we know, initiate 75% of divorces and they can leave a man anytime the moment they feel unhappy? So women tend to listen to their heart, rely on their feelings, right? But what about the vows? What about the promise that they've given to their husband during the wedding ceremony? Or was it just a show? It doesn't mean anything.
No, it's just what they were feeling in the moment.
Yeah,
At that
what they're
moment.
feeling at the time, vows mean nothing anymore, unfortunately. I mean, they really do. And that goes both ways, not just, because women, initiate divorce far much more than men. But, vows aren't what they don't mean the same thing to people now that they did to my grandparents. When they got married, that divorce wasn't in their vocabulary. You worked it out. I mean, it was very extreme cases where divorce actually happened. But nowadays, I mean, it's just as easy as, blocking somebody on Facebook, to get a divorce, because you've got that all too popular irreconcilable differences of why you're getting a divorce. You have to have reasons. So vows are nothing anymore. I've even heard some of the newer marriages, they don't even say till death do us part. They will say till love do us part.
Oh, what? Oh.
Yes.
Are you serious?
I'm exactly serious. Yeah. Someone when they write their own vows, it's no longer till death do us part. It's till love does us part.
Until I change my mind. That's
exactly
wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, the sanctity of marriage is not what it used to be. So, and that's, I don't know how I really feel about that. Cause Alex, me and you and Josh have talked, my stance on, legal marriage nowadays. Cause it's the risk is too much. And that it's unfortunate that it has come to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Josh, just give me a second here and then I'll pass it off to you. It's crazy that's kind of the stance. Well, that's not kind of the stance. That's the stance that I've always had with my girl. And it was kind of a new way of thinking for her that she had never experienced before. And then once I kind of set it up, like, this is what I want to do and this is why. And then when she shared it with her coworkers, they all shamed her. Shame these whores. They all shamed her. They all shamed her for not wanting to get a formal state marriage. And I don't understand why.
Oh, because it's not popular. And remember, propaganda, it's been for a while here. So even if they may say that, oh, my truth, your truth, this feels nice, and they base all of their decisions on their experiences, on their feelings. This is because this is something that they've been exposed to for their entire life. And we see the lawyers, they tell these women how to divorce their husbands in the most lucrative way, how to get most benefits out of their husband. So women enter marriage with the plan B attached. In case something doesn't work, here, I'm going to swap him with another guy. He'd better comply with my frame, with my goals. He'd better make me happy or else.
Yeah, and I think we've reached a stage where we're reevaluating a lot of our institutions that we've kind of taken for granted, right? Because it's like, people are asking like, well, is college these days, is it really worth it, right? Or is marriage these days, right? Is it really worth it? Because there's another side of the coin, right? Where everyone thinks that, hey, back in the 50s, right, it was marriage. My grandparents, they stayed together, like things were great, and people tend to shun that. But then when, 23andMe did their study and they found out that 43% of everybody that submitted DNA test had a false lineage, they thought it was one thing, but DNA proved it was something different. That just goes to show that, okay, yeah, people were definitely married, but they were still like running around, messing around with each other like all the time. So I think we really need to like evaluate, as a greater society. And I think we're kind of taking a look at this is, what is the actual metric that matters, right? Is it, the quality of the marriage and like how people interact and get along in it? Or is it just like, number of years and simply not getting divorced? Because, that could just be a hostage situation if you really think about it. Or, it could be, hey, we took our vows serious, we're really committed to it. So I think we're at a very interesting turning point right now where a lot of our traditional institutions that we, again, sort of just take for granted, right? Hey, you buy a house, you go to college, you go get married. We're kind of taking a little bit more of a scrutinous look at this and saying like, all right, well, hold on a second. Like, how is this actually working? What's the answer? I don't know.
I think it's because institutions have been infiltrated with feminism. Even in church, like if you look at church, well, what happens in church? A lot of men, they are leaving church because church overcorrects only male behavior. It doesn't correct women. What does it give to women? Oh, you are a run-through harlot. We will welcome you if you say that you are no longer that. But saying and doing are completely different things. Right? So she hasn't gone through repentance. She doesn't have the humility to even acknowledge that she has done something wrong because it's so deeply ingrained in our society. Being a harlot is normal now. Everybody celebrates them. So even in church, what does church do? Okay, man, you man up, you do better, you wipe up this run through harlots.
That is so, oh my God. It's such a good point. It's such a good point. We were just talking to one of our guys last week, actually, during our private Zoom. And by the way, guys, if you do want to join Men of Now, definitely click the link below and join that group. We have some fantastic conversations. But he was talking about when he was going through his divorce, he was being told, just be better and her love will come back to you. And it's like,
it's what God
wait a
wants.
minute. Wait a minute.
And I even have a more personal experience of that because when I was married, when it started to go having problems, I'll say that, we did go to counseling through a church and it was all, you're doing bad. She's perfect. You just need to better yourself when we were actually going there because of some of our actions. I'm not going to get into those details, but so it was very pro-female aspect when you went to a religious type counseling. And not to say they're wrong for that, but and even regular counseling, it's usually leans towards the women's favor. And that's why, men, we don't scoff at counseling, but it's really not beneficial for us in most cases, I say.
I think that a lot of it is that counseling, those types of things, it's very emotion based. It's like talking through emotions, and guys don't do as well with that sometimes. And I think that's kind of where the disconnect is. So then when you get thrown into like marriage counseling or things like that, they're focused on feelings, but you're not focused on feelings. You're focused on solving a problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's been proven, women tend to make decisions based on emotion when men tend to make decisions based on logic. And I'm not saying anyone is right or wrong, but that's just, no matter how much evolution we go through, that's not going to change. So that's why trying something that's emotion based, which is counseling, to take a man there that's not a very emotional person, it's not going to be beneficial for him where it's going to be beneficial for her. Yeah. And I think it leads to even more problems later on, to be honest with you, for most couples.
This is what I wanted to say, Kevin. You just went ahead. Yeah, because every time men give up on their masculinity and they start thinking emotionally, women will always preside there because it's their kingdom. Women are masters with emotional manipulations. So every time a man defaults trying to understand a woman and her feelings, and notice what happens. She will twist him the way he will be easily persuaded.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the analogy that I used a couple of streams ago, right? Where it's like, hey, if you're a guy, you're that trainer at SeaWorld, right? You belong on the land. Stay on the land. It's solid because you're going in the ocean with the orca. That's their domain. They're going to swim circles around you. They're going to flip you around, and they're eventually going to drown you because you can't tread water that well. So, know your strengths. But, I think that's what the beauty of this real era is that now at a global scale with the internet, now men and women can come together and kind of compare the notes. And we're starting to see a lot of the common threads be like, oh, okay, here's what we can do on our side. And here's what you can do on your side. So that way, again, we can get back to what we're meant to be, because we're such a complementary team, and we're just so much better together than we are apart, which, tying this back to our original topic, is one of the core things that in the rational male is repeated over and over again, is that men and women, we're together than we are apart.
Yeah, but it requires us to speak the same language or close enough, because when you try to when you try to approach women with the rational thinking, women are so out to lunch delusional. I'm not saying that women are incapable of rational thinking. It's just they need to want to be more down to earth and realize that they are wrong, because they can't look where their emotional decisions lead them to. Disaster.
Yeah. No,
Disaster.
I understand that. And Elena, I want to actually put this on you right now. How, as a woman, how can we as men better communicate with you?
With women?
Yeah, like when I say with you, I mean with women in plural.
Well, if they are delusional out to lunch, you don't communicate to them.
Give us some tips and tricks.
Why would you waste oh my gosh, guys, I really I just don't think that undeserving women should get what they want from men. I think that women should be proving themselves to men that they are worthy of men's investment, men's commitment, and men's resources. But there are so many undeserving women who don't want to challenge their delusional mindset. They are all harlots, because this is what essentially feminism teaches women. You become emotional, you follow your tinglies, you follow your fifis, so you can't say no to the stimuli. There is a man out there, okay, he has some resources of something of what you want, and then if he wants to have sex with you, you spread your legs, and then no problem, because we have abortion, right, to prevent the consequences for women that our grandparents did not experience to the fullest extent, right? There was no abortion, there were no contraceptives. And now what? Oh, everything has a correction. You mess up here, you are unthoughtful, irrational, you rely on your emotions because you want to have sex with this guy. No problem, lady. Here, we have a fix for you. The problem is that everything is so comfortable and convenient for women that they don't experience any discomfort.
It's a good point. I kind of think about it today. It's like, especially when we look at how the stock markets and everything are doing, you get a bailout, you get a bailout, you get a bailout, and everything is just fine. So there's always a backup plan. And it's like, how about you just get rid of your debt? How about we just fix everything instead of continuing to throw money all over the place? It's the same type of concept. And there's too many options. I would agree with you on that point.
I actually have a question for Elena. My question to you would be, so what can be done to, I guess, decode the delusion, right? Because it's obviously it's coming from somewhere, right? So what can be done, or what's the solution on that front for decoding what that delusion may be, or where it may be coming from?
Well, that's a long process, because we've acquired this delusion for multiple generations. It's not going to be fixed over time. But I would say that women need to be challenged. Their mindset, their beliefs, they need to be challenged, because without that, they are not going to realize that they're doing something wrong, and there should be consequences to their choices, to their poor decisions. So if men check out from unworthy, undeserving women, because we've talked about standards, right? And we say, if we come back to that graph, women have preferences in dating. Men should have preferences too. Okay, and it's pretty normal for men to say, okay, if you are a run-through harlot, I don't want to deal with you. You know, if men unite in that regard and say, just we are checking out from all of the unworthy women, you know, we are not going to deal with them, we are not going to give them our resources, we are not going to promote them, because how many shows even we have that are facilitating, you know, more degeneracy, more promiscuity. There are quite a few, and it's everywhere. It should start from somewhere, you know. If it starts from independent media, and then we get it to church, and we start with the institutions, maybe there is a chance of mitigating the damage, but we are not going to go back to the old times, because we can't undo the hormonal birth control, right? We can't undo social media. It's a big component. I wouldn't say it's evil, but it definitely exposed women to the global market, where they can advertise themselves. And if men choose to not give their resources to these women, maybe women will realize, because only when there is a harsh consequence to them, when they feel like, okay, something they are doing is not working. Because when you try to talk to them nicely and convince them, you know, ladies, maybe it's not like everything is still working into their favor. They can still get things from men and from our society.
No, yeah, and I can agree with that, because shaming or even offending has become such a taboo thing to do. For lack of a better term, you know, shaming the women that do OnlyFans is, oh, well, you're just a bigot, you know. However, you know, we as men, especially in the men of now, you know, if we find out one of our members is on OnlyFans paying for membership, bro, you got one or two chances to fix that in your life, or you're out. Because that's where we have to start holding each other accountable for, because OnlyFans wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the thirsty men out there paying that $5.99 a month. If men stopped paying, they would have to stop doing it. So I'm not saying that it's the men's fault, but there's a equal level of accountability there. But the fact that we live in a society now that when you want to actually shame someone for basically wrongdoing, or I wouldn't say wrongdoing. That's probably the wrong way to put it. I can't come up with the word right now. But doing something that is unbecoming of a female, which is probably, you know, selling pictures of your butthole on OnlyFans, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You're not allowed to shame her. She's doing her. But we can't shame the men that are paying that. We as men can do that, I'm saying. So that's in the society that we're living in right now, that women can do and men can do without repercussion or being held accountable for their actions because of PC or, you know, going against the norm. That makes it very difficult to try to make things in line for traditional values.
The priorities have shifted. Go ahead.
Oh no, you could continue, and then
I just wanted to add that it's not just OnlyFans; it's Instagram. It's the #1 dating app now, because they use it as a funnel for their OnlyFans. I see, and we've analyzed content, and I really, I don't like what happens on social media. I think it actually diminishes their credibility, and it doesn't promote the good content that people could watch and benefit from. Because women, they post themselves semi-naked on social media. They use kids. They basically exploit their kids to get more likes, attention. So is it women who do that, or is it people who are supporting it too?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm going to push back on you heavy right now. I don't get to choose the fact that I get a bunch of big-tittied women on my Instagram feed. I don't get to choose that.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that I don't know if everybody knows, but if you leave your Instagram open on it's tracking constantly how long you have a certain post up. So if you're scrolling and so if you're scrolling and then you go ahead and leave something open on like some big titty girl or something, which I've done plenty of times because I'm scrolling, I'm like, all right, screw this crap. And then I throw it to the side. It's actually counting that as you're interested in that type of content. So then it will push more of that content to you. So honestly, I think the main issue is the algorithms and
Algorithm.
the companies themselves. But let's keep in mind, these companies, they want to make as much money as possible. So how do they do that? Pushing content that people enjoy. And it's just annoying because I don't want that. I don't want that, but it's unavoidable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting question because especially when it comes to that, right? It's like because I know a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, so I do know a lot of people on the content creation side of the equation as well, or the OF side, right? Which again, the value proposition is, well, I used to be making say $30,000 some dollars a year, and I'm trying to and just catch up with all the bills and everything. But then as soon as I got laid off from my job and I went and did this, now I'm making 6 times that. You're going to tell me I shouldn't do that? It's like, it's a really, really hard, interesting question. But also to the other point, it's that, the only reason that is there and that is available is because there are people that are willing to pay for it. Right. So, call it simping or whatever it is. Right. It's the interesting question of like, okay, why is somebody willing to pay for this? And now the real question is, why are there so many of that someones that are willing to pay for this at scale? And I think that's probably a really more interesting and telling question of where things are. And I think a large reason is that because there is that big gap between guys and girls right now, a lot of guys just don't know how to navigate the space or interact, either for fear, for lack of wanting to do so, or for whatever many odd reasons, right? So, there definitely is a very, very large problem where, again, if you look at it, the only reason why OnlyFans makes billions of dollars every year is because there are a lot of lonely guys out there that are very, very willing to part with their 5, 20, whatever bucks a month to have some type of virtual interaction. So, that's a really, I think, interesting question to kind of delve into, where, as they say, right, follow the money, right, and just kind of see where it leads. So I think, and again, I'm not saying I have any answers or anything on that, but I do think that's a kind of interesting thing to delve into as we're trying to figure out how do we navigate our way forward through this.
Yeah, definitely. People see and people prioritize. People prioritize clout now, money, no family principles or values. Because before, what did our grandmas did? They just married and they didn't have to work. Well, I mean, they worked at home, obviously, right? But they were busy raising kids. There was only one single family income coming from a husband. Mm-hmm. And now women going into the workforce, it caused the separation of the salary, the division. So now men and women, they make approximately the same amount of money, and it's still impossible to maintain a household on a single family income.
Yeah, no, that's
because
true.
men are making less money now. Men are making less money, and women are whining like, oh my goodness. They say, I'm so strong and independent. I have the simp army that are paying me, right? I sell my butthole pics on internet, and I'm fine without a man. I'm fine without a man because I get my bills paid, and I don't need a man, right? I need a man for emotional support, for emotional protection, but it already castrates a man, his masculinity and his frame and everything. Therefore, women don't respect men. They don't commit to this man. They can't stay in long-term relationships with this man. They are lacking pair bonding because they are in the workforce.
Yeah, I think that's You know, it's interesting that you say that. Like, I'm almost wondering, because I know that even it's natural as you get older, you have less friends because you then just latch to the right type of people. But every woman that I've ran into around my age in the past few years, and just throughout life, it's like less and less and less friends. I got two of my best friends right here, right now. I got Kevin, I got Josh, and I have a whole bunch of other people. But all the other women that I come across, I meet, I talk to, less and less. And it's almost like there's a lack of identity. Oh, that's going to be a show in and of itself.
Yeah, and there's another interesting thing that you brought out too. You know, we're talking about how a single family or one income is like really difficult and strained to like, you know, make a household thrive in the modern era. And I think part of the equation that factors in there too is that if you really kind of look at the history of money and people's ability to make money, really only until about like the 1980s was it really were people really able to make a lot amount of like a really high amount of money really quickly. Like that's still a relatively new thing that we're still trying to figure out. Because again, you rewind the clock back, for the most part, most people tended to stay in their social economic class. And yeah, you had some upward mobility, but nothing kind of like what we see on the scale or the ability today. So that's another thing that I think kind of like social media that in general humans weren't prepared for. I think that's definitely something that as a society, we've definitely not been prepared for, because the ability, and again, it's really been only about 40 years where, again, young people have the ability to make an insane amount of money really, really, really quickly. We're talking life-changing or tax bracket moving kind of money really, really quickly. That does a lot of things on the psychological side of the equation, but also how we interact and try and navigate throughout the world. And yes, I do love the stock market as well.
Yeah.
I finally had a green day.
I loved it. Yeah.
I finally had a green day today. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, you know, one thing I'll bring up about the dual income, you know, when I was married, I was active duty military. My ex-wife was an x-ray tech. We didn't have children, so that made it that was okay to have the dual income, but it depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to live. I mean, a man that really puts in his grind and climbs his ladder still has the ability to support a family. It just depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to live. Do you want to live middle class, or do you want to, you know, take the vacations? That's how you got to look at it. But where the double standard comes in is now like just a man that pays his own bills, has his own place, does his own thing. That's just the norm. That's what's expected of him. But women have now, oh, well, I can pay my rent, pay my car payment. I pay all this, you know, so I'm a boss bitch. You know, that I'm a strong, independent woman. When it's for a man, that's just a norm. That's just what's expected of you. So, but you're seeing a lot now, and I do not watch TikTok, but I see a lot of people that critique TikToks. You're starting to see a lot of women that took that route, that divorced their husband, went their own route, did the independent thing, and then now 5-6 years into it, they're not happy. They don't like that dynamic anymore. They miss having the traditional type of relationship where the man was not the sole breadwinner in all cases, but the majority breadwinner, paid the bills, came home. And a lot of women are finding out that it's not, it sounded good on paper. But now 5-6 years into living that lifestyle, they're not exactly happy with it.
Yeah.
So
I've been seeing a lot of that. Go ahead, Elena.
No matter what a man does, women will always gripe about something. You know, it's just the nature of women. And the more you give them, the more they want, and the less happy they are.
Yeah, what I found interesting is that, and that comes back to Rollo's book. That comes back to shit tests, something that he talks about a lot. These are shit tests. They're trying to see how much they can get, but they're not shit testing you because of what they want. It's not that what they're saying is what they want, but they're trying to test to make sure that they have the safety and that you are the person that you are. And so that's what I think was really, really important. And we're going to wrap up here, guys, just because we've been going on for a while. I'm really excited to see where we go. And I will close this out at the end of this before we do kind of a roundtable of everybody. But that's essentially what they're doing. They're pressing the buttons. They're seeing how far they can go. They don't necessarily want to go that far, but they're going to see how far they can go. And it's up to you to make sure that they're staying or not. My words are not coming out the right way. You need to make sure that you're understanding what the ask is, because the ask is not for more or for more responsibility. It's for security. Okay. So why did women ask for those equal rights? Why did they ask for being able to make as much money? They asked that specifically because they wanted the safety of that, because men at the time probably were failing. That's just the truth. And so if that's the case, and then we get to where we are today, then boom, they're making the money, they have all the responsibility, and they're like, oh crap, I don't really like this. And then they want to go back. But we can't go back now. We can only move forward. And so it's all about understanding the social dynamics that go on in between that entire dynamic. Oh my God. I'm sorry. My brain is just going at 1,000 miles an hour because this is a very interesting topic. But yeah, I think that Rollo's work, just going back to the original before we go around, Rollo's work was a great way to introduce it to the public so that they can understand exactly what's going on, why it's going on, and then how to adjust to it. So from here, I want to go ahead and I'm going to actually go from top all the way down to me. So I'm going to snake it around. Kevin, if you have any final thoughts on this topic and where we're going to go.
Well, we covered a lot, and it was a great conversation. Elena, thanks for being a part of it. Hopefully you can be a part of this in the future. But before we did this, I took some notes and I did some analytical thinking. And so my last thing that I actually typed it out, so I want to read it. Overall, the rational male encourages men to take control of their lives and relationships by understanding and adapting to social and biological dynamics. Tomassi advocated and advocates for a rational approach to intersexual interactions. Focus on self-improvement and personal fulfillment, and that will make you a better partner for the person that you're with. And that's how I feel. And that's, if you read the book, it's a Bible. It really is. It's not a small book, but if you read that with an open mind and can come out of that, not making the opposite sex the enemy, and focus on yourself. Because one thing I was thinking about the other day when it comes to looking for love, a lot of people come to that epiphany. It's like, I'm ready to find love. I got to find the right person. And to me, that is the wrong way to look at it. Is I'm ready to find love. I'm ready to find my other one. I need to become the right person. And that's the way I look at it. And I think if people, men and women in general, start looking at it in that aspect, we can start getting back to the nuclear relationship, the nuclear family, and better, healthy relationships.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. I 100% agree with you on that. My head's still spinning. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say my final thoughts is again, kind of coming back to that recurring message is that, men and women, we're a team. We work so much better together than we do apart. So, it's great to have conversations like this. And that's the thing I would encourage a lot of people to go out there and do, is just have those conversations. Because again, a lot of times we have a lot of different beliefs that, they do need to be a little bit challenged. And we need to hear and understand what that other side is, so we can really find the actual pathway forward. Because for the most part, we all kind of want the same things. We just tend to argue about what's the best route to get there. So I think the most important thing is have those conversations. And you know, I'd definitely say that you know, just remember that we're men and women, we're both on the same team, and we do it so much better together than we do apart. But it does take individual accountability on both men and women's sides, but we just have different sets of challenges. So definitely on the guy side of the equation, the rational male is a really, really helpful tool to help you better understand what challenges you have to face, but also how you have your own power to be able to navigate that space and find that solution that really works well for you.
Fantastically put. Elena, final thoughts where people can find you? And you're on mute right now, by the way.
I was flipping my page because I was making notes as always. Yeah, I really enjoyed this live stream. Thank you for having me, Hats, and it's a pleasure to meet Josh and Kevin. And guys, if you ever want to talk to us, you're welcome to join us on Saturdays. We are actually running discussions, and Hats, you too, before the Dragon Ship. So if you have time, you're welcome to join us. Yeah, I would say that The Rational Male is a great book. It's probably the first book I've read when I was introduced into the Red Pill, and I have deep respect for Rollo's work. I think that he's right when he talks about frame, because frame is everything. And also, I would add rational thinking and applying rational criteria when men are selecting women, because there are a lot of women who are not worthy of men's attention, and yeah, just don't waste yourself on these girls, because they will drain you either emotionally, mentally, financially. It's important to vet women carefully, just as much as women vet men. But women are not very selective when they are young, but when they hit their epiphany phase, we all know that they all want to all of a sudden be in a good relationship. But this is where they can really trick men, because when they are run through harlots, their ability to pair bond is diminished, you know. So it's important that men don't fall for the trap, and surround yourself with good, strong, masculine men. You need the brotherhood, because nowhere else you're going to find the support and guidance. All of the institutions basically are against the men right now, and it's going to take a long time to improve the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My head is still spinning. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm thinking about this, and Josh, you brought it up. Well, we got here for a reason. There were actions being taken by both genders that brought us here. So there obviously needs to be something done about it, and I'm very excited to continue to dive down this path, and we'll figure out how to go ahead and figure out how to best communicate that information to create a better society. As you had said as well, Josh, and as was stated in the book, The Rational Male, you know, men and women, they're better together than they are apart. I'm a huge fan of the yin and yang, because it really is the perfect balance in the universe. Jesus Christ. Universe. And it really is interesting with that, that we've kind of gone off kilter. And I know that we're all individuals, but we're also a community. So if we can help guide the community to a better future, let's do it. And that's what we're doing here. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. We went through Rollo Tomassi, essentially creating a complete ripple in the space that quite frankly, I do believe was for the betterment, because it helped people understand things. And we did not have that before. He compiled all the information that we had previously into one digestible book that can help any young man or any young woman in their life. What we're going to be doing from here, is talking about the 21 con. We're going to be talking about CMQ. For those who do not know, Christian McQueen. He is my favorite, and dude, I used to listen to his blog all the time. And Josh, you've actually met him in person. We're going to be talking about that, talking about him and his impact. And it was actually at his Playboy Summit. Josh, when was that? Was that 2016 that they had the Playboy Summit, or was it 2014 or 2015?
I want to say it was 2015. It might have been then.
Okay, so we're talking we're dating back a little bit, but we're also pretty current, and talking about CMQ, and then his buddy Goldman. I don't think a lot of people know who Goldman is. Goldman, I mean, hell, dude, I'm looking around my apartment right now, and it's all Legos. It's all this beautiful Lego art, and it's so stupid. I have Winnie the Pooh over there. I have a Sesame Street set that I'm building right now. I just randomly off a whim bought a Calvin and Hobbes and a Calvin and Hobbes, like a Hobbes plushie to decorate as well. Dude, my entire apartment is like the nerdiest, stupidest thing in the world, but I love it. And what's so fantastic about that is that I'm living myself. And with Goldman, when we start to cover him and his impact in the space, it's all about living yourself, making your world actually like a dream, a fantasy, make it fun. And so I can't wait to do that. The 21 con thing is going to be very interesting to talk about because that caused a lot of rifts that then caused a lot of new groups and a lot of new creators to exist within this red pill or manosphere space. Then we're going to go into CMQ and the Playboy Summit, which actually was the very first time that Rollo came out publicly and showed his face. We'll talk about Goldman and some of the things I was just talking about. And we're going to continue to go on from there. So if you guys want to continue this conversation, sign up at the link below. You can go to menofnow.us, or you can go to the link in the description. This was an absolutely fantastic show. Thank you guys so much for everything. And until next time, peace out.